Welcome to the Hot Rod Hangout Podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Ashley.
And tonight we have a special guest in the studio, Drew Strunk, the Hot Rod Fabricator on Instagram. What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot.
Been checking out some of the projects you got working on and excited to get to talk to you. So you got a little...
Yeah, we have too many projects going at once.
Oh, that's about everybody. I mean, we can't just have one car.
Oh, yeah, you can't be a car guy without having too many projects.
We got one that runs and one that's in the process of working on it and just trying to keep one running long enough to get the other one done so it can get tore down to get started on it.
And then leftovers in the backyard.
Yeah. So what originally got you into the car obsession, man?
Well, I guess you could say it's in my DNA. My grandfather on my mom's side always was a tinkerer, no matter what. I've got pictures of an old 36 Pontiac that he took the running boards off of and kind of made a little hot rod out of it, put dual carburetors on it. And then he made go-karts for my mom, and she used to race go-karts with all the boys back in the, I guess, mid-50s. And my dad has always been into hot rods. So, growing up, I was never into sports. My dad and I were always building models when I was younger, or taking Hot Wheels and drilling the rivets out and repainting them and cutting fenders. And so I had no choice, man. But I'm happy. I couldn't be any happier with the upbringing I had. But yeah, it's all heavily in my family is car stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, some of us are fortunate to have it, and then some of us are fortunate to meet car people later in life. So, what's the current project? What are you working on right now?
For myself, I've got a 32 coupe that I'm working on. I had another one a while ago, and it was pretty right on traditional, some old speed parts, and I love that car. But I sold it to add on to my shop, and that car went down into Texas. But I've been wanting another 32 coupe, and I did some trading deals, ended up with a body from a guy out in Washington State, built a couple frames for him, or in the process of. But I'm building another 32 coupe for myself. And then I also have a 32 truck that I'm building as well, kind of for my wife. She does photography and stuff, so she wanted an older truck. I'm building it for her. I don't know if she'll like it, but we'll see. It might end up being too small for her. We'll see. But if nothing else, it's trading material. It's selling material down the road.
Yeah, I just got rid of a 32 truck about 6 months ago now, but I bought a 32 truck on a 32 chassis and was going to do it. And then my mom and dad bought their 34 truck, and me and my dad are pretty close to the same size, and my mom is tiny, and watching them accordion themselves in a channeled truck did not make it look as fun as I was imagining it to be. So I sold the body and bought a Model A.
Yeah, they're tight, but it's going to take some work to push the seat back and thin down the back of the seat. But I hope it works. But yeah, they're neat little trucks. I've always wanted to build one. I've had many vehicles, but I never had a 32, so I thought it would be fun to build it anyway. Use up some parts I got sitting around.
Very cool, very cool.
Is she out there helping you tinker with it?
Not actually that project. I was kind of keeping it kind of under wraps for her.
Gotcha.
But she does help me. I mean, she's actually I have a 2-ton Chevy big truck, 47 big truck. And I got the grill chrome plated, and I got it back, and she was helping me, and she broke a nail and chipped her fingernail. So I thought this is going to cost me a manicure for sure. But no, she's always willing to help. I'll tell you, there's always stuff that needs to be done on another little Chevy truck I got. And she's always, on me about, hey, you need help? You need help with that? And I don't know. She does help me. I just feel bad about keeping her too dirty or too, I don't know. I shouldn't worry about that, but
Hey, if she's excited about it, more power to her.
Yeah.
Ashley likes to call her working hands.
Yeah.
So if I'm out working on something, she wants working hands. So
And I've donated a fingernail to our 54, so I understand her struggle.
said some cuss words, wrapped it up in a mechanic's rag, and was right back out there helping still. So,
but I'll tell you, she's the first one to want to go take a ride and want to ride with me, which I love that. I think that's the coolest thing, somebody that you're married to and that they support you. That's the best thing you can have, and understand the hobby and understand that, sometimes that rare part comes and you need to spend a little money to get that one part. But then again, I've always tried to make it to where when I sold something, I spiffed her a few bucks just so she knows that there's money to be made in this stuff. So try to be fair about it.
It's way easier to do this if your significant other understands. Because Ashley's realized we've went to a couple little garage hangouts and Ashley's the only girl there. Or, I've went and picked stuff up and the wife comes out and it's like, oh, good, great, you're getting rid of that. Like, awesome. And it's like, Ashley's like, what do you mean? This is awesome. Why are you? I mean, we're glad you're getting rid of it, but.
We started to find a good group that actually has some females in it, but they're hard to come by.
Oh, yeah. Well, years ago, we were at a car show and we met Bo Huff, and he was working for one of the magazines at the time. And he saw my wife with her camera, and he says, hey, you go to a lot of the shows? And she's like, yeah, I go quite a few. And he says, well, why don't you start taking pictures for us and send them in? So there for a while, she was taking pictures for Car Culture Deluxe and a few of the other magazines. So that was pretty nice. And she's there, and it kept her busy. She liked it, and it was fun too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was Ashley. I took her to Turkey Rod Run, and it was like her first like big thing, and she took like 1,000 pictures on an iPhone. And I'm like, all right, if you're serious about this, like, let's get you a camera so you don't have to like, hey, I have to let my iPhone cool down before we can walk more. And it's like, okay. So she got the camera, and then we started the podcast, and now her camera stays away most of the time because it's trying to get content for this and trying to also enjoy the show while also trying to promote and everything like that. So she just takes pictures of our stuff, and every once in a while she keeps it in the car just in case something cool pops up that she needs to get 4 or 5 pictures of, So
always.
So what's the car that got away?
Oh man, the car that kind of put me on the map was a Volkswagen that I built. I had my first early cars were Volkswagens, so I have a little bit of a Volkswagen past. And I built this crazy Volkswagen, chopped, channeled out of 2 horrible bodies, and it had a sliding rag top and it was an oval window, and I made it a split window, and put a nasty Corvair motor in it, and the thing was only maybe 3.5 feet high. And I sold that right away and made really good money on it. And it really put me on the map building these cars. But I sold it right away. And I wished I would have had at least another year with it, just so that I could have enjoyed it more. But it went down to Texas, man. It went down there, and I have another cab over I built, and it went down to Texas. So three of my favorite builds are all down in Texas.
Texas has a car culture to rival pretty much everywhere.
Most definitely.
Yeah, we a podcast that helped us get started. They're in Texas, and we were talking one night, and he's like, "What do you mean you don't have cruise-ins?" And I'm like, we don't. I'm like, I'm gonna start one, but like we don't really. And he's like, dude, every night there's something going on. And I'm like, well, there's not. I mean, we have the cars, they're just tucked away, and we're trying to get them to bring them back out. But I took probably 15 years away from cars, and we switched to bikes for a little while. Then coming back, I'm like, where's all these cool cars that used to be, like you'd go to Webster Swap Meet used to be the swap meet. There'd be 50, 60 show cars, car corral, flat full, vendors, packed in there. And then the last couple of times we went, I'm like, are you sure? Like, there's like four car show cars, and they're not pre-72. Like, it's just like, yeah, you can come show your car. And it's like, and vendor spots. And then they've recently moved, and all these people showed back up again. And I'm like, well, that's okay, cool. Like, maybe it was just the place got stale or whatever happened. And I'm like, man, people need to bring their cars out. And I work my job. I drive around all the time. I'm constantly like, oh man, there's a Trans Am in that garage. There's a hot rod sitting in there. And you talk to people, and it's like, hey, do you get out? Oh, me and the wife take it to ice cream, or, once a month. Maybe she lets me drive it. I'm like, what? Like, get out, man. And you just, because we do live in that location between Ocala and Tampa, is one of, if not the largest, it's one of the largest retirement communities. So yeah. They all have cool cars tucked in them garages. We just got to get them out.
All definitely.
So, which we have a couple. We do a cruise in on the third Sunday of the month, and we're moving locations this month. And we have some of them come out, and it's cool. It's not quite the cars that are the type of cars that we mess with, but they're still cool to see. So currently, what is the favorite car you own? You got to have a favorite, man.
Man, that's hard to. I don't know. It's like when
that's
you
like
sell
a favorite
car.
Kid or something.
Well, and that's the thing is, my wife and I don't have any kids, but every time a car sells and goes down the street, I walk to the end of my driveway and watch that go all the way down the street, and I always tell her, and she looks at me, she's like, "Are you sad?" And I said, I'm not a parent, but this is what it's got to be like to selling a kid, I mean, it's just, it's hard, but I can't keep them all. I have a 67 Volkswagen I've had since high school. And I guess that's by default my favorite, just because I've had it the longer. I've had it since 1991, and drove it to high school. And but my favorite thing to drive, I built a 51 Chevy truck. I built a whole chassis for it. It's got my own design rear suspension with Corvette C4 front suspension. It's slammed on the ground, and it handles like it's on rails. And I love that truck. It drives so good. But I know there'll be a day and a time that truck goes down the road, I'm sure. But my Volkswagen will probably never sell. Although, if you ask my wife, I get so angry with that car when I have to work on it. I'm always ready to sell it. A lot of times I'll just let it sit when it needs something. Like right now, the voltage regulator's out of it. And I'm like, man, I don't even want to touch it. And the funny thing is, she's the one who wanted that thing running. After we got married, it's just sat in my garage. And she said, we're 10-year anniversary. She says, you know what I want for our 10-year anniversary? I want that running. And I said, really? That's what you want? So I had a good buddy of mine up north here of Cincinnati help me rebuild a motor for it. And it's a pretty stout little motor. It's a fun car. It really is. It's just, I don't know. Those Volkswagens are so difficult to work on, and I've got big hands, and I'm a bigger guy, and it's just, it's hard to squish yourself in this little car, but by default, it's my favorite.
Car that you posted, the Volkswagen Bug that you posted in reference to Bonneville, is that a car you built, or just a car that you seen, or somebody, No,
so going back to the car that got away, that's the car. That
car did get away.
Black and
you
white.
Shouldn't have sold that car.
And here's the thing. When I built that car, I was like, I had these crazy 17-inch wheels, bias ply. So it looked old. Everything looked old on it. I had tractor tires on the front, 19-inch. So it was just really odd and different and fun. But the Volkswagen motor looked too small. And I got to talking to a local guy here that was a rail buggy guy. And he said, man, you need to put a Corvair motor in there. And I thought, I don't know. I don't even know anything about a Corvair motor. Well, this is back when Craigslist was good, and you could get on a Craigslist that would do the whole country.
Yes.
And I found a Corvair motor that was built for a Porsche, reverse rotation, huge heads. This thing made like 250 horsepower. and it was in North Carolina. And I called the guy, and the guy goes, "Yeah, sure, come get it. I got all kinds of extra parts. Will fill your truck up full." So my dad and I headed out one Friday, drove all the way down there, picked up this motor, knew nothing about it, finished that car, stuck it in there, and wired it up and fired it. And that thing was insane. It had aluminum firewall, and it would rev to the moon. I mean, it was just, it would crack like RPM like you wouldn't believe. And big, huge 4-barrel carburetor on it. And I did nothing to that motor but make headers for it. That's it. And it just made that car. I mean, that car kind of fell together. Like putting it together, I think I had $4,000 or $5,000 in that car. And it just fell together, but it was a full chassis, early Ford front axle, and chopped it heavy. And I even made, but this is before you could buy fold out windshields. I took a 36 Ford windshield frame, cut it down, and made it fold out. And just love the car. I love that kind of work where there's kind of no rules. The only rule is to try to make it kind of look old and really hot roddy. But that is my favorite kind of work, is when somebody just says, "Hey, you get full reign, do whatever you want." That's what I love. And that car was it. That car put me on the map. It was in a lot of magazines.
I can see why.
At Bonneville. Well, at Bonneville, man, I always like to take people rides in cars, because, not everybody's will ever have a chance to ride in an old car, or especially little kids at car shows. My wife's constantly letting kids sit in it. But when I was at Bonneville, I was letting people, we would ride up to get food, and people were standing there and they're like, "Oh, could I sit in it?" I'm like, "Sit in it. Let's ride in it. Just come on." So I would give people rides, and and I met people from France, Germany. I got into a German magazine, a French magazine with that car, a couple here in the States, but it opened doors for me. And another cool thing, if you know anything about Volkswagens, and this was the best thing for free beer, they have semaphores that come out is like out of the doorpost for the turn signal, and this car had those. But instead of making them work, they're real finicky. I made the thing open up, and it had a beer bottle opener on it. So people would even come over to me, and they're like, "Man, I heard this has got a beer bottle opener in it." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You got a beer?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So, man, that car would get you free beer it was so funny. And I'm not really a huge beer drinker, but it was so funny out at Bonneville. People were coming over, "Man, I hear this has got a built-in beer opener." So it was just a fun car all the way around.
Nah, that's awesome. Yeah, that was kind of the idea when we got the Model A. I was like, I want to be different. I want to be weird. I want to make people question. So it's air ride front and rear, but it's all hidden. So it's going to lay on the ground, and no one's going to see air ride. So doing it again, I'm not ever going to do another front air ride in a cross member, but it's going to look cool when it's done.
So did your cross member, does it kind of look like the old Sen Pen made a cross member where? Okay, so cool.
Yeah, it's a Model A cross member, except for like on the outside of the center. So the center is still skinny, and then the outside is 4x4 plate, so the bag can mount to it. And then I had bought the cross member from Old Tin, which is a similar design to Sen Pen, but the arms, there's too much adjustment. So you have the swivels at the axle, plus you had bolt adjustment. So to get it all working together, it would hop the front end, because it would like bind up, and then you just add more air until it boink, and then going down it would like creep, and then it would get stuck, and then air would evacuate, and yeah, it was. So BP Customs, one of our sponsors, he started the chassis for me, and he figured out like, oh, okay, so we just ran a straight cross member between the two perch bolts and mounted the lower bracket to the straight cross member. So I can't take credit for that. I was like, I'm lost, and he come back and he's like, I think we can do this, and I was like, yeah, that works. So shout out to him, because if not, I'd still be scratching my head.
Now, what did you do for rear suspension?
It has a 4-link.
Okay.
So it's got a 4th-gen Camaro rear end, 18.5 inches of kick up, parallel 4-link with a panhard, but it's all under the body because it's a 4-door sedan. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I'm running the air tank is polished, or I'm going to polish it, so it's gonna just look like it has 2 fuel cells back there. Or
That'll be cool.
Or I'm gonna hide I bought a fuel cell, but I don't really know if I want to use it. I bought a regular square fuel cell, so then it would just look like I have one polished fuel cell back there for the air tank.
Yeah.
It's still in the thought process.
That's the thing, though. You know, when you start working on these, you don't want to do too much too quick, because you don't want to screw something up or wish you did something a different way, you know?
Yeah, I'm modifying the front end a little bit just to make less angle for the motor placement. Because originally the motor was in line with the heads, so it didn't give a whole lot of room for header clearance. And I'm like, well, instead of having to custom build a set of headers, and then if I don't like how they sound or how they look, now I got to custom build another set. So we just moved the angle down to clear. So I still may have to modify the front tube of a off-the-shelf kit, but at least it's 1 pipe, not 4, or 2 pipes instead of 8. And then it's getting small block turbo 350, 3 deuces, and then it's got a Gilmore belt drive, because I don't have blower money, but I could afford a 2.5-inch blower belt. So, but speaking of budget, unlimited budget, what car are you building?
Oh man, well, I'm into big trucks. I really like old big trucks, and I'm presently in the hunt for. I want an old crew cab. I don't necessarily care, although in an ideal world, I'd probably want a 47 to 52, 53 Chevy truck, or 64 to 66 crew cab truck with a Detroit diesel, and I'm sitting on 2 of them now, and slammed on the ground with some polished wheels, something to haul another hot rod. But I don't know. That's kind of, I'm always looking for crew cabs, early crew cabs, and it's hard to find because they really didn't make them, and they were all coach built. But everybody I know, I've thrown the word out to them. Hey man, you know, I got people in Colorado. Hey, if you ever see some kind of old railroad truck or whatever, let me know. But that's the present unlimited budget thing that I kind of have a few parts squirreled back for. But you know, when you build this stuff, you got to buy stuff when you see it. And I've got so much squirreled away. Right above my head is my storage, and it's packed full. I got shelves up there, and there's rear ends and axles and speed parts, but that's just how it is when you play with this stuff, you know.
Well, are you also on Facebook or just Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Make a post, tag me in it. I'll share it on the Facebook, and we'll find you that our page is pretty good at finding that rare stuff. And also, if you scroll down on our page a little bit, there's a crew cab that was for sale down here. It was a crew cab 50s era rollback.
Really? Man, I've built so many of those trucks, and I love them, mostly with Cummins. But I've got 2 Detroit diesels that are just sitting here that I want to build a slammed out hot rod hauler so bad. But yeah, definitely, I'll hit you up on Facebook for sure.
Yeah, because we've had a couple people looking for parts, and it's like, oh, just boom, share your post, and then usually within a couple of days, you at least have a lead on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the 54 I tried to, we had a little difficulty with it this weekend. It still made it home. I did have a trailer. I brought a trailer to it, but it drove itself home. It did not get on the trailer. But I was like, we could put the small block that's in the shed in the 54. And Ashley was like, no, what would you put in your rat rod or in the Model A? And I was like, well, I guess I'd have to look for a, 4BT or 6BT Cummins or something, She's shaking her head right now, just me talking about it. I think it would look good with a diesel and a turbo sticking over the hood.
It would look good. I'm not denying that it would look good.
But the 54 is her car, and like you were saying about your wife, and you getting mad at and you just let it sit somewhere. That's how that car like fully became hers. We were washing it one time, and I was like, "This is the ugliest car ever. Why would anyone want this car?" And she was like, "I like it. It's got a face only a mother can love." And I was like, it does. So it doesn't get a whole lot of attention. And most of the money goes in the Model A, but once the Model A is done, then she'll have to start making decisions, because I'll point her in a direction, or if she tells me she wants something, I'll try to make it happen for her, but the decisions are on her at that point. So.
Yeah, you let them kind of choose what they want sometimes.
Well, she, fortunately or unfortunately, she didn't have like cars, like she liked cars, but she wasn't like in the car world till she met me. So a lot of our stuff is the same, because it's like, oh, I don't like this, so then she doesn't like it. So the car is going to be pretty much built like I would have built it, because we have similar interest, but I still got to make it her idea type, you know. But I do know it'll have an automatic in it. Whatever we put in for motor-wise, it'll end up with an automatic. But other than that, it's up to her. I've sent her lifted 50s cars. I've sent her slammed on the ground 50s cars. So she can make her decision, whatever she wants to do. She knows that static life, as low as it is right now, is not fun.
No.
Yeah.
But it's all good. So what's a show or event that you try to make every year?
A show that I would love to go to every year is the Lone Star Roundup. To me, that's in my opinion, I've been to a lot of shows. Between Lone Star Roundup and Bonneville would be the two places that I would go to. However, I haven't been to either one in quite some time. And I'm itching. I've got the Bonneville itch, and I've got some good buddies down in Austin, Texas, and I got a place to stay, and it's nice. It's nice to go down to the Lone Star Roundup, and just the Lone Star Roundup is so cool because it's not just a show. You got to get there early. You got to be there for almost a week before and hit up all the shop crawls and check out all the open houses and the little mini car shows. And man, it seems like everybody's barbecue roasting, you know, and it's like, it's insane. They're like, go get you something to eat. And it's just like, I don't know, Texas has that feel like your long lost family, you know, and you go there and the show is just amazing. But as for local shows, we have a show we just had it on 4 weeks ago, the Pumpkin Run. It's the end of the year show for us locally, and most everybody puts their cars away, and that's kind of a local club puts that on. It's a big deal around here, and that's definitely we're used to be a sponsor for it. We give away a chassis. Or I'm sorry, not a chassis, but a frame. We give away a frame, and I always get a lot of work from it. It's a good show. It's kind of like a family feel, like. But as for the big shows, man, the Roundup in Bonneville. Bonneville's not really a show, but it's the whole experience.
It's an event. Yeah, that's definitely bucket list. We almost had an opportunity to end up at Lone Star, but stuff fell through. We both still work normal jobs, so Ashley can take her work with her, so she's getting a little closer to being able to go to these shows, but we haven't made it enough that I can be like, all right, I'm out. So, because I don't want to build cars for people.
Well, and I heard another one of your podcasts, and someone was talking about that, and I'll tell you, it's difficult. I love what I do, and I'm very thankful that I have a job that I love to do. I work with my dad. I got some good people and some good supporters that help us, and we can send stuff to, but it's difficult. I'll tell you this, out of 100 customers, you'll have 3 or 4 that are cream of your crop. Yeah. Then you'll have probably 50 that are quite good. And then you'll get all the way down to you'll have 10 that are absolutely positively make me come home and want to go back to welding. I mean, that's what I did before. That's what I went to school for. And it's like, I just get a, normal day job. And it's amazing how people can ruin it for you. Thankfully, that really hasn't happened. I've just had a few that are difficult, and that's a whole nother thing on business end of it. But I enjoy this stuff. I mean, my free time is ate up with these cars. I go to car shows. I can get away from work and go to swap meets, which I'm a swap meet hound. I love buying parts. I mean, I've even built cars around just one part. So But yeah, the right people. It's so hard to run a business. You got to center yourself around the right people, and that's difficult. Man, I've been doing this for over 20 some years, and it's taken me all that time to learn what to do and how to do it and how to get good customers. But I got a handful that really put me on the map and helped me out, and I got a handful that it's almost not worth working for.
Yeah, and that's, I know, and in shop life you don't have this option, but like sometimes I'll go out and we'll bang on the 54 or work on the 29 or whatever, and then other days like I go out there and it's like an hour, or like you're just kind of like wandering around looking at it, and then you're good. Like it satisfies me. When you have somebody that's paying you to do it, you don't get that option of, I'll just go back in the house. You got to get it done. And also, different visions, which that works both ways. If you have somebody do something for you and your vision doesn't line up with what they have in their head, even if talking it does, sometimes, I wouldn't have done it that way. Well, if you didn't want me to do it that way, then maybe you should have done it yourself, and vice versa. If I was to have somebody do something and I didn't like it, well, don't really complain to the person. Just, okay, like maybe I should have done it myself. And then if it doesn't turn out the way I want it, then it's my fault, not yours.
Well, and that is my biggest thing is I have to get into somebody's head.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, I am not a people person. I could be locked in my garage and work, and the only thing you'd ever see me come up for is food. I have to get into people's head. I have people that come by, and perfect example. I mean, just to make this short and sweet, I had somebody that said they wanted, there's a guy that made Model A's with the rear tires over the back wheel. It's killing me. Anyway, this guy said, I want my car slammed on the ground. So first thing I always do, I say, before you leave, we're mocking up this body and we're going to put it where you want it. So I mock it up to where he's telling me that he wants it. And I get all kinds of tires sitting around. I roll them up over there and I got it all mocked up, and I'm sitting back looking at it and I'm seeing, and he's looking at it and he goes, no, that's not what I want. I don't want that at all. And I'm like, well, that's what you said you wanted. So, there's a connection with, I got to get into their head and figure out what their vision is. And sometimes people don't even have a clear vision. And I'm not knocking that about people, but you have to decipher that. You have to figure that out. And it's kind of difficult, but the best customers are when they say, build it like you build it for yourself. Man, I'm done. I love that. That is right there.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, you get a better job if you let me do that. If you let me build it how I would want to build it, it'll be safe. It'll be slammed. It'll have the look. Okay, let me do it. Give me full reign. But if not, then and trying to figure out what somebody else's vision is in their head can be very difficult. But again, it comes with the territory.
Yeah, and also mocking it up and showing them, hey, this is what it's going to look like done. Because a lot of times, even the Model A, I took measurements and I was like, okay, it's going to be on a 28-inch tall tire, and I want it to be at the bottom of the window. There's enough body that'll work. There's not. If I want it to lay on the body, then it's going to be 2 inches into the windows, which I bought the widest rear end I could possibly find, and I put the lowest back spacing. So I have plenty of room. I can go down. But it's not what I pictured because my measurements were wrong. And it wasn't like until you got the fenders off, you couldn't really get a true measurement. And then the Model A sedans have a little bit more kick in the rear. The back of the body doesn't go all the way to the ground. So if I pulled a measurement on there and went, 28 inches is going to be here, then you walk around to the side and pull 28 inches. Well, now you're 2 inches lower. And it's like, okay, well. And then also I wanted to space the body is a 1/4 inch off the ground when the frame lays on the ground, because I didn't want to have to worry about is there a rock, or is, hearing my door crunch or not being able to open and having to go through the hatch, There's a lot of stuff that that an average person or somebody that hasn't ever done it doesn't think about. Okay, well, I'm going to slam a Model A on the ground. Okay, well, and I realized that I just didn't realize how much it was going to kill, but the transmission's going to be in the car with me. Well, so all of that foot room that I had when it was stock height, and I was like, oh, this is all the room. There's not a whole lot of room to party in there anymore. When it still was stock height and stock floor and the 3-speed, I'm sitting on the bench seat like, man, I got all the room in the world. Well, now that it's sitting on the ground with 4 inches of channel and the transmission's sitting inside with me, I'm like, oh, there's really not a whole lot of room left. And also there's different ways to do stuff, because I've seen Model A's, like my Model A right now has none. Has about a foot width for a brake pedal because of the way the transmission tunnel was built. But then I've seen other cars that it channeled just the same, and, well, hey, you have all of this room. Oh, well, your transmission tunnel actually hugs the transmission. There's no room between it. It's like, okay. And it's just different ways to accomplish a goal, and not every way is the same, and not every way is going to work for your application. Trying to put 3 pedals in a Model A is way harder than putting 2.
But that's again, I've got a block of wood. When somebody brings a stack of wood, and I slide under the car and I mock everything up, and I'll purposely, once they like it, I'll even screw it up. I'll move the front axle too far. I say, now let's just move it around. They're like, no, I don't like that. And I don't get a tape measure out until they say that they're happy. And then when they do, I pick like the front door edge and I measure over to the center line of the front wheel. And then I will not get a tape measure out until they're okay with it, or that I have to maybe direct them that it needs more room because of the engine they're using or whatever. But yeah, and I had a guy that had a Model A that was already chopped 6 inches. And he was about my height, about 6 foot tall. And he said, man, I want a small block Chevy, a tunnel ram, and a turbo 350, and I want to fit in this thing and drive it. So I said, this will be a tall feat. And I said, you have to remember that as low as you go, the motor's not moving. The motor's staying right where it is. Yeah. Basically, you can figure 5 inches off the ground for the oil pan. And the rear end ain't moving, and the drive shaft's not moving. So everything, you're going around that.
Yes.
And he understood that, and I said, I'll do my best to make you fit in this car. And I did. But what you have to do, and most people don't realize this, is you have to have butt room. You got to have room for your butt to go down in that frame. So what I did is, and the car was already cut up. There's no floors in it. I shoved that frame all the way out to the edge, and even put a slight cup, 1-inch cup in the frame rails, and put the seat. He even made the seat on the ground, and he fits in it. He loves it. He drives it. And but literally the cross member for the transmission, I made the tunnel go right over it. But he was down. I gave him as much room as he possibly could, and then I put a flat pan on the floor. But he fit. But you have to think about, okay, where am I going to sit in this? And I think that's a lot of things where people don't even think about, oh man, I want a chop top, I want it on the ground, but how am I going to fit in there? That's like the last thing people think of. But you can make it work. Just shoot those frame rails all the way out to the door edge. And man, you can get a lot of room and make the floor flat. But I've built quite a few cars like that. And people start understanding, oh man, you really do need to sit on the bottom of the frame rails. I said, yeah, that way you got all that height, you got plenty of room.
That's Zach Park sends me scissors emojis every time I post the 29, and I'm like, dude, let me get the seats in there, and then we'll take a measurement, and if I can chop it, I'll chop it, but there's not going to be much chop, if any, because my floor is on top of the frame, just because it's a straight frame rail. So as wide
Yeah.
as it is in the front is as wide as it is in the back. It's not, we didn't space it out any. But it was just, it was the way it was built. And like I said, the front I'm changing a little bit, but I'm not going any wider. But yeah, thinking like that, and a good, for instance, of no room is my dad's truck, the 34. I mean, we've done pretty much, other than it does have bomberseat.com seats in it. So they do have a little bit of layback, but his issue isn't necessarily room from the seat to the pedals. It's more the angle at which his legs have to be to get to that point. So we've spaced the seat up 1.5 inches off of their brackets and tried to get a little more downward angle to give him more room. But he also has a 26-inch Lecar shifter that he's not willing to give up. So, put a shorter shifter, your knee would have somewhere to go. But it's cool. He likes it. So that's the bullshit you deal with.
So what body is your Model A?
29 Murray, 4-door sedan.
Okay.
So I have to the kick up of leg room. My legs are straight out. I just got to figure out how to get pedals side by side out that way. And then I'm just going to run probably the lowest seat I can find, or cushions.
It's always about trying to stuff everything in there, and then especially when you're that low, you got the bell housing of the transmission, and you're trying to fit 3 pedals in there. I mean, it just, depending on automatic or a manual, but you're trying to stuff all that stuff in there and still be kind of somewhat comfortable.
Yeah. We seen a car, we went up to a show about 3.5 hours away. It was long at that time. Well, no, it's still the longest trip we've ever taken in the 54. And there was a Model A there, and I told Ashley, I was like, take all the pictures from every angle. And looking in the car, it looked like you didn't have any room because he built the console up. So like it was like an armrest. And I was like, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of room. But then seeing the guy that got out of it, I was like, if he can fit in there, I can 100% fit in there. Because he was a good 4 inches taller than me and at least 4 inches wider. So I'm like, if he got there, I'm good. But he just kind of made it where the trans tunnel was tall, but still skinny. So it went kind of at a radiused angle up and then just went skinny all the way back to the car, and he tied it into the kick-up. And then he did the seats. He welded in the seats, the rounded style seat. He just made the back look like they just flowed in and then down into the door. And I was like, that's a genius idea. Why didn't I think of that? So Ashley took all the pictures, and then I'm going to try to duplicate something. Maybe not as tall, because his was probably mid-chest. And I was like, that's not necessary. Because I could see where the rear end is, and I could see where the transmission is sitting on the ground, and that angle is not required up here. But once we get it all fit, we'll sit in there and figure it out. And I'm going to cut the trans tunnel back out and then start rebuilding. The floor is good. I just got to get a little bit more room at my feet. But that's what happens when you try to push the limit and try to do something that nobody's did. You realize why nobody's done it. Because even the Senpen kit, you see everybody, oh yeah, I bought this, and you look for air ride for a Model A, and everyone tells you them, or Old Tin Hot Rods, they similar design. Senpen's comes complete, welded and everything, whereas tin comes flat. You have to bend it and weld it yourself. But same kit. And I'm like, but I've never seen this on a car. You hear all these people guiding people to that kit, but then you don't ever see it on a car. And then I'm like, why? This. And then once we started trying to mock it up, I'm like, that's why. Because it doesn't work the way they want it to work. And maybe, probably if I would have called the guy and been like, hey man, this there's probably some stupid thing that, do this, and it probably would have worked fine. But at the time, it was just like, this can't be too smart. I mean, it's literally an arm. You know, it's not a control arm even. It's one arm. If you can't figure out one arm, come on. And then finally we just, like I said, put the straight bar across, and now it works great.
Yeah.
So what's a show or event that you've never been to that you'd like to go to?
Wow. That's a good question. I've had a friend of mine. My dad's big into 32 Fords, and we've actually had a couple friends of ours go up to Vancouver, Canada, for the Deuce Days. And man, the pictures I've seen sure look like a pretty cool event. I mean, my wife and I just came back from Vancouver, but I think that would be a neat show. That would be a neat show to go to. But not a big car show fan, in the sense that let's go to a show, bake in the sun, and whip out our chair and sit there. I'm just not. I grew up in playpens and little kids going to the Nationals, MSRA, Good Guys, and I like driving events. And we've had a lot around here, around the Cincinnati, Ohio, and Kentucky area, where they've been having these shows where you get in the car and you go check out somebody's collection of race cars, or it's all 32 day where you drive around, and man, I really like driving. I don't like sitting. I don't like, I just assume go see something in my car. And that's why I honestly don't go to a lot of car shows around here. I get asked that a lot. Like, why didn't you go to the car show? If anything, my wife and I will just get in our Volkswagen or get my truck, and we'll just take a ride. We just, we're on the edge of Cincinnati, and it's all rural from on the east side here where we're at. And we'll just take a ride, drive all the way down to Maysville, Kentucky, and check things out, or go get an ice cream somewhere. That's more my speed. But there are still shows. I've never been to a Trog event. I have my own personal feelings about that, but I would like to see it. But again, it always falls back to the best show I've ever been to was Vaudeville, because there's a cruise in every night. And secondly would be Lone Star Roundup. And luckily I've been to both those events. Man, I'm trying to think of anything that I've never been to the turkey run, although my dad and I used to go down to Moultrie, but we'd always come back home before we went to the turkey run. And I wouldn't mind seeing that. I mean, that's doable. It's warm too. It's a good excuse to get away from here when it's snow on the ground.
Well, so it's not really a car show. It's more just a hangout. It's the hangout. It's our 1 year show, January 4th at Big Daddy Don Garlett's Drag Race Museum. Love to have you down here. It's an all car welcome, no trophy. But we're doing 3 awards. Long haul, you have to drive. Female owned, and then our pick. And then my mom's doing a Mom of the Podcast award. And then a couple of the car clubs are doing awards. And then all of our sponsors that are showing up are going to build trophies and give their picks. And then also that podcast that I mentioned out of Texas, Hometown Hot Rodder, will be in the house and give away one of their picks. But we'd love to have you down, man.
Well, man, if I can make it, that
like I said, it's our first one because it's our 1 year anniversary for the podcast. And or if you find yourself in Florida on the 3rd Sunday, we do a cruise in. So
yeah. So you said that show is at Don Garlett's?
Yep.
Man, that's every time we go to Florida, we go, man, you have to go. I mean, yes. I just love his engine room, and that's going to be a good event. That'll be a neat place to have a car show. And sure.
Every car show entry gets you a discount for the museum.
Cool.
So it's going to be a good time. And then we're also trying to set up a little cruise out. So like I don't know where. It'll depend on how many people are there, how many groups we have to pick. Like, hey, you go over there and we'll go over here. But I'm hoping it's big, and I hope we have like 14 restaurants we can go visit. But, you know, I don't want to jam 100 cars in somebody's parking lot that don't know we're coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, it's all years welcome, because the reason for the podcast is trying to keep this alive. We're trying to connect the younger generation to, you know, our parents' generation or older, that, you know, they have the knowledge, they were around, they identify with the cars that we like, and maybe try to get the young kids to stop squatting their trucks.
Yeah. And, you know, that's one thing that kind of hit me one day after we have a local in bad weather in January. We have an indoor car show, and it hit me one day coming home. I'm like, you know, all these little kids are down there, and they may never have a chance to. I mean, I grew up in cars. I grew up between my mom and dad in a 32 coupe. We went everywhere in that car, and it hit me. I'm like, there's little kids that will never get to sit in one of these, and some people are so picky about don't touch my car. And I always had big trucks and hot rods and anything. And I told my wife, I said, let's open the door and let these kids sit in. And they go nuts. Kids. And then it's always, you see the father over there like, oh, can I, and it's so funny. The father's like, can I sit in there? But yeah, I see the hobby. I worry about it sometimes because I want young kids to come up, be into it. And I think the only way that there will be is they just need to be exposed. They need to be exposed to it. They need hands-on. They need to be able to, touch these things, get into them, maybe even change the oil or something, and I know I have a little nephew, and he goes nuts when he comes in my garage, and I love it. I absolutely love it. He's jumping on. I'm in the little wheel horse garden tractors. I've got my big truck in here, and he goes nuts. He's jumping on everything, man, and he's picking up stuff, and I am so excited. I mean, it's just neat to see him get like wound up. Like he was just at that Pick and Run show, and my wife was walking around with him, and he was running around, jumping up and down, looking at cars. So
awesome.
It takes the right kid. I mean, I know everybody's not into it, but yeah, I'm all for promoting it, man. Let's get these young kids to keep going on this.
A good for instance is we're moving locations. Just difference of opinions. It was becoming a car show, and it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to just be. I was trying to mimic the 50, 60, 70-year-olds that meet for lunch in their hot rods. They BS about cars. They go in, they eat some good food. They come back out. They can spitball ideas. Oh, you need help with this? All right, we're going to your garage, help you out. Oh, well, I'll do this for you, but now I need you to come over here and help me drop this motor in. That's what I was trying to mimic, and it was turning more into the set your chair out and, California Duster, which is that if that's how you enjoy your car, that's perfectly fine, but that's not what we were trying to do. So we had went to go talk to another venue, and just by off chance, a young lady and her son were sitting there eating, and there was a couple, probably in my mom and dad's age. They had a Cuda, little 383 Cuda, nice car. And I was just like, hey, we're promoting. So I'm like, hey, here's business card, give us a listen. We're trying to do a cruise in. This may be the new location, stay posted. And the young lady goes, hey, can my son talk to you? And I was like, yeah, of course. What's up? And his dad, I don't know if he passed away. I don't know what happened, but the dad's not around anymore. And he said, well, I'm going to sell this truck. And it's a second or third gen Dodge. So it's not old, but it was his dad's. And lifted crappily, yada, yada, yada. And he saved up money and he bought a Duramax truck. And he swapped the gas motor out of the Dodge and put the Duramax in it and lowered it back down to a tolerable height where there wasn't like crappy steering, you know, and all that. And he's painting it, him and his grandpa are painting it and everything like that. And I'm like, that's awesome. And she's like, well, I'm looking for somebody. My dad has a 64.5 Mustang, and he has all the stuff for it, but he just can't do it. I'm looking for somebody to do it. And my dad was like, he's standing right there. What do you mean? Kid's passionate about cars. He's not going to hurt it. Well, he just doesn't have the knowledge. He will when he gets done. And if he doesn't know something, and I took the plain business card back and I gave him the one with my phone number on. I said, holler at me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll put it out. We'll find the answer for you. You want to just come hang out at the house? Oh, you'd let me do that? I'll let you come on the podcast, dude. Like, this is what it's all about, is growing. Everybody's welcome. I don't care if it's somebody that has always seen cars driving the road and they're unobtainable, or the person that's been in the garage with their dad growing up and they have all of this knowledge. But if we're honest with ourselves, these cars aren't cheap anymore. You know, 15, 20 years ago, we just had a podcast. I don't know if it was last episode or episode before that. And the guy he could have bought a Model A body for $250. I couldn't buy a Model A body down here if I added a zero to that, unless I wanted half a body and I have to go buy another one to make one. You know, so, and also, I don't care if you're into newer stuff. Come hang out with us old stuff and I'll take you for a ride. I got the opportunity to take somebody that's never rode in an old car, and he gets in and he's like looking around. I'm like, what are you looking for? He's like, seatbelts. I'm like, we ain't got no seatbelts. We ain't got no airbags. I said, we get in a wreck, we die like men. Well, it's rattling. Yes, it does. And when we hit a bump, you're going to hear the back tires hit the rear fenders because it's that low. What? I'm like, yeah, we're going to scrape. We're going to rattle. This is all part of the fun. You ain't got a radio. Nope. Roll the windows down. You can't hear it anyway. Like, that is the passion, or what I want to instill. And Ashley's first car show, and it was a car show that we went to, was my birthday right after we got the 54. And a guy turned around in a sea of shiny cars to take a picture of the 54. And the face that she had, like the glee and the excitement she had to say, that guy just turned around and took a picture of us. And I was like, yeah, it's cool, ain't it? Or we back in, and again, we definitely, if they gave out the rustiest car award, there'd have been no other pick but us. Everybody else was like shiny and their bodywork was nice, and like no, it's still got the 235 in it. Yeah, it's got a 5-speed in it, but it's still a 235. And people walking up and saying, "Oh, is this a 54?" Yep. Oh man, I took my wife to go get ice cream on our first date in a 54. Or my grandpa had one on the farm and he used to let me drive it around before I could get a license. You know, like, those are the stories that I love to hear. And also, when you pull up at a gas station, kids never seen that car. So they're asking questions like, what is that? Or that's really old. And then you tell them like, yeah, I'm building a one that's 30 years older. What? They made cars that old? Yeah. Here, check it out. You know, like you said, open the door, let them sit in it. You know, those crank windows. You know, the 54's got 2 cranks on the door to really confuse you, because you got to open the vent windows with a crank too. So it's, you know, it's awesome to see the excitement.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the stories. I mean, the memories, the everything that comes with driving something that may or may not make it.
That's all part of it, man.
Well, I mean, the drag strip riot, we went, it's a vintage drag race in Orlando, and the same people that gave me the gentle nudge to take it to Jacksonville was like, hey man, we're going over. I'm like, cool, we'll follow you. And in front of us is a custom painted 57 Chevy that's beautiful and flake and everything. And behind us is a 50s Plymouth that's slam, chop, custom, shaved, everything you could possibly do to it. And then in the middle is our little rust bucket car. And people are still rolling by, honking and thumbs up and waving, you know, cool. And he says, well, we're going to hop on the interstate for a couple miles. Is that all right? And I'm like, not really, but you said a couple miles, so okay. Well, it was like 23 miles. It was not happy when we got there. I put it in timeout. It got happy. We drove home. We stopped for gas. It wasn't happy. I went home, got a trailer, brought it back. I said, well, before I load it on a trailer and break this 100% get home ratio, let's just try it. I leaned on the key and it started right up. I said, all right, well, put the ramps back on the trailer because I'm driving this jugger home. You know, those memories, the pulling up somewhere and people asking, did you drive that here? Like, yes. And even in your head, even in your own head, you're like, is this going to make it? And if not, you fix it. Like, it's not a big deal. It's always better to break down with people, though, not just one car. And also the connections that you make. You know, there's not a lot of places that we could go in the United States where I couldn't put a post out and say, hey, I'm in BFE here. Is there anyone here that can help? You know, the Hellion Car Club, which is the 50s 50s custom, you know, they have clubs all over the place. He's like, I break down. He says, I call whatever chapter I'm closest to and say, hey, do we know anybody over here? And he goes, and usually within about 30 minutes, there's somebody there to either help me fix it or tow it to their shop to help me fix it. And then I get back on the road. It's all a community, and that's what it should be. It should just be everyone wanting to see everyone succeed, because the memories that you make in a classic car are awesome. And new stuff breaks too.
So some of the best trips I've had, we used to take customers every 2 years out either to LA Roadster Show or Bonneville was the big one. And man, going out there, like you were saying, you pull into Brown Cow, Kansas, or somewhere in Nebraska or in the middle of nowhere, and you know, a little agricultural, tiny little town, and you pull in and you're getting gas right off the highway, and people come out of the convenience store or the gas station. Did you drive this? And then they're looking at your tags and they're like, whoa, are you really from Ohio? Like, yeah. And they're like, really? I can't believe it. I said, well, there's times that I can't believe it either. And maybe I'm not the most intelligent person for doing this, but I'm telling you, the memories that it makes, especially seeing just the scenery change, driving on the highway, driving something that you built with your two hands. That there's nothing better than that. That is to me the most rewarding. And then, you know, camaraderie with the people you're with. It's kind of cool to just be driving your car. Like you said, I don't think there's a single car guy, and you'd be lying to yourself if you did, if you're not driving that car going, I hope I make it home, or I hope I make it to the gas station, or it's just because you're thinking of every mechanical thing that's functioning. And I don't know a car guy that there isn't something in the back of your head that isn't saying that, you know.
But in 32 or 54 or 29 or anywhere else, or, you know, whatever year it was, if they needed to go to Bonneville, they got in their car and they got up on the crappy interstates and drove to wherever they were going.
Yeah.
It's you know, it wasn't like I'll take the daily. No, that is the daily. Yeah. You know, and
yep.
It's awesome when you make it. And the stories and the memories and the people you meet along the way. Because, like you said, you pull in somewhere, even if there's no other cars in the parking lot, people are coming out. Oh, man, I got this. And now with social media, you know, we follow each other on Instagram. You know, it's, you know, and, oh, man, I got this, or this is what I'm working on. Or, hell yeah, man. Like, I hope next time I come through here, I can call you and be like, hey, we're going here. I'll catch you on the way in, you know. And advice, which that was the biggest thing with this was, I don't know everything, and I don't claim to know everything, but I've needed parts. I've needed advice. I've needed, how did you do this? Because I can't figure it out. And Ashley is really good, even though she says she doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge, but she's really good to stand on the other side of something and look at it from the other way and go, well, why can't we do this? And it gives me a chance to either say, well, I thought of that, we can't do that because of this, or we'll run that through again. And maybe I'm telling her to run it back through so she can realize, like, hey, we can't do it that way. But then she runs it back through, and I'm like, well, wait a second, I didn't think of it that way. Maybe we could do that. And then we try that, and it either works or it doesn't. You either win or you learn everything.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, I love it. It's awesome.
Well, and I can tell you another thing that will help for future young ones. I grew up a short time in mini truck world, and I love mini trucks, but I was very displeased with the mini truck world back when I was in it, for the fact that you ask somebody how they did something and ain't nobody wanted to tell you nothing. And that's a quick way to screw up a hobby and to lose people, is when you don't share stuff. And that's one thing that my dad started years ago. Even if somebody didn't buy something from us, even if somebody didn't build anything or get anything from us, if somebody calls, we're going to try to tell you how to do it, where to get it, or whatever. Because even if they don't, they're going to tell somebody that you did help them, and your name is going to get out, and you build a reputation on that. And that's what we tried to do. But I mean, I've got this book that it's funny, I call it the shop Bible. I have all this information, just part numbers, what fits, what doesn't, and I bet you I don't get a text a week or two, people saying, hey man, what little radiator hose was a good radiator hose for, and I'm willing to help. I mean, I can't necessarily drop what I'm doing, but when I get a free moment, I don't mind helping somebody out, because if you don't help them, nobody's ever going to learn. It's never going to go to the next generation. It's never going to move on. So I try to do what I can to help out. But I was very put off in my younger years when I seen people in some other hobbies too, but they want to hold on to their knowledge and they don't want to pass it off. And I get it if you're making money on it or proprietary things, but you need to share something, because it's the only way people are going to learn, and it just promotes the business, the hobby.
Mini trucking got to where, like, it got so hard to keep up that no one wanted to share what little information, because somebody might beat them to it. Like, I have a Model A build in my head, and Ashley's the only one that knows about it, because I don't want to see somebody else do it. It would make putting a Model A on the ground a hell of a lot easier. But I also don't want to let somebody else do it before I try it. And then maybe once I try it, I might I'll give you everything you need to know, because it ain't going to work. But because the biggest thing about, any lowering of a Model A is the body gets wider as it goes up. It looks like you have all the room until you start putting the body back down, and it's going down, and all of a sudden them tires are getting closer and closer. And then if you don't run real skinny tires, well, now, you got any amount of back spacing, well, now you're eating up more room. It's just, but it's the little things like that. And I have found, not everyone, so you can't group everybody in it, but a lot of the older generation of hot rod stuff, they protect information because they don't want to waste time. So if some kid comes up to them and asks a question, and it's the first time they're ever seeing them, and they've been doing this forever, well, are you really just asking because you're curious, or are you asking because you really want to learn? Because those conversations need to be had either way, but the amount of information I'm going to spew to you is directly proportionate to how willing are you to go apply that knowledge. And that was why we started the podcast, because I was like, they're not all like that. And I always say that you can learn stuff from any age. You know, there's been times that, and I'll admit it, there's times that I'm like scratching my head, like, why is this not working? And it's something stupid. Like, oh, maybe you should connect that wire over there. Oh yeah, that would probably help. Or how many times you backed up to a trailer and a little kid walks over and go, well, the lights won't work because you didn't plug them in. You know, I've driven places and got somewhere and somebody's like, hey, your trailer lights are out. You look at the back of the truck, well, the wire's been dragging for 40 miles. Well, because you never plugged it in. You know, you got in a rush and you left and you weren't thinking. And that's usually when you get in trouble. When you take a second to just think about it, it all works out. But sometimes you get frustrated, especially working on something that, you know, isn't that Lego set that you're putting it back stock. And, you know, now you're trying to make something that was never designed to work on an application that, you know, even if people have done it before and they lay it out for you, you run into a snag that they just skipped over because they've done it so many times that that's not a snag that they even think about anymore. And it's something stupid that, you know, oh yeah, you were supposed to drill that rivet out. That would have made taking that, or take this part. That was the biggest thing that I had to learn, was sometimes take more off to make it easier, because the time it takes to put that part back on is way quicker than trying to build an 84 extension to get to that bolt, where you could just take the starter off and then you're looking at the head of the bolt. Just things like that. Well, speaking of advice, what's one piece of advice that you'd give somebody that's trying to get into this?
In the hobby, be realistic with your time and budget. I get a lot of people that have no clue on a budget, and be willing. I'd say be realistic with your time frame, your money, and listen to people that have experience. Because I don't know how many times people have called. I hate to say it, maybe they've wasted a couple hours of my time, stop by the shop, ask me questions. And if you're here to talk to me, I'm going to make it short and sweet and to the point. I'm going to give them the best advice they can. I don't know how many times I've had people come back to me, wasted more time, and said, well, I know you told me to do it this way, but I went ahead and did it this way. And now I don't know why my car doesn't work, or why something's rubbing, or why something doesn't function right. Well, that's because I've done this professionally for 20 plus years, and I've been around my father since since I could retain any information, and I'm 48 years old. So I got some experience. I'm not saying I know everything, and I don't mean it by that, and I don't want to become arrogant, but it's just the fact that I know you asked me something and then you didn't do it. So just listen to people around you and almost double your budget. Whatever you think it's going to cost, it's going to cost twice that. And whatever time you think it's going to take, it's going to be done. So
yes,
I'd say those three things combined.
And don't put a deadline. Go ahead and give us the dates, babe.
All right.
What we got coming up? Where are we going to be at?
Oh, well, everywhere, all the time. Well, let's see. November 23rd and 24th is the Field of Dreams car show at Florida Classic Parks in Brooksville. And then the weekend after that is Turkey Rod Run, 28th through December 1st. We all know where that's at. And then, of course, you got to start the year off right. The Hangout, January 4th at Don Garlett's Museum of Drag Racing. All vehicles are welcome. There's going to be podcast sponsor, car club picks, and that other podcast is going to make an appearance. Food and merch vendors. There's going to be raffle 50-50 for the Ryland Strong Network. Pre-registration only at hotrodhangout.com. And for pre-registered vehicles, you will receive a gift bag with goodies and merch.
Is there anyone that you would like to shout out before we go through our sponsors?
Anybody to shout out? The only thing I can say, I'm thankful for my job. I want to thank my dad for teaching me what he did, and really stringing me along in this hot rod world. And I'm thankful for that. I really am. I also want to thank my wife because she really supports me. I mean, really. I mean, you need somebody that can understand. You need somebody that understands what you're into and what you like, and she's there, man. She supports me and she understands this stuff, and it's not easy, but I got to thank her. I mean, my dad and my wife Carrie, they just very supportive, and it allows me to do what I like to do with, I would say, minimal stress. There's still stress, but just minimal stress, and I enjoy it.
Awesome.
Well, shameless plug time. What's the name of the shop?
Our shop is Dropped Axle Productions in Cincinnati, Ohio.
All right, guys. Till next time, make sure you go show BP Customs on Facebook some love.
Check out Throttle Addict using the code word HOTROD for 15% off.
Make sure you go show Johnny Jalopy Hot Rod Artist on Facebook, YouTube, and JohnnyJalopy.com.
Rat Rod Wood Fire Pizza, shout out to them, one of our food vendors. Check them out on Facebook, ratrodswoodfirepizza.com for a menu and to book an event.
And make sure you go show Low Income Clothing and Low Income Photos on Facebook and Instagram. Father and son team killing it.
Oh, yes.
And also prayers to Kelly Brommigan. All right, guys. Till next time, get out and drive your shit.
See ya.